In 1998, a book appeared by French author Michel Houellebcq called Elementary Particles. This book dealt with two males which were absolutely incapable of forming any kind of meaningful relationship. The two males, one called Michel and the other called Bruno, each have individual problems. While Michel's problem is that he is incapable of reciprocating love, showing love to his partner. Bruno is an incurable sex addict for whom it is absolutely impossible to fulfill his desires, to satisfy his desires. Now, when this book appeared, it led to huge controversy. So a lot of people said Houellebcq was a misogynist, that the book was actually against women. But there was actually a second kind of interpretation of this book. And this interpretation was determined by the thought that actually Bruno and Michel are victims of their environment. That these two people are incapable of forming relationships because their environment led to an intense concurrence in the area of sexual reproduction. Now, it is of course a given that just as there, for example, is concurrence in the area of education, in the area of occupation, and just as there is concurrence in the area of occupation, there is also a certain kind of concurrence in human conduct with each other, so in the social area. This was actually Houellebecq's thesis in his first book, which led this thought to its consequence. So it assumed that there were winners and losers also in the area of human conduct with each other. So it proposed a problem which until then has never really been spoken about. And this is what makes this book so relevant today, because it sort of prophesied what we see today, which is that the increasing political division among the genders also lead to a certain kind of group not being able anymore to participate in human relationships, which is exactly what Houellebecq's first two books portrayed, even then when the problem was not as acute as it is now. Now, what was the solution in this book? Like, how does the book then solve this problem? The problem of this group, which is unable to participate in relationships with other people. Well, the book ends by actually outright replacing sexual reproduction by a cloning mechanism. I'm sorry for the spoilers for those who wanted to read the book. So it replaces sexual reproduction by a cloning mechanism, which leads to the disappearance of genetical diversity among the humans. So all of this new species appearing after this cloning has been discovered are actually the same, so they don't differ in any aspect from each other. Now, why am I telling you this? Why is it important what some book from 1998, so more than 20 years ago, told us about human reproduction, about social relationships of humans between each other? What does it have to do with our time? Well, the reason I am talking about this is because exactly 7 years ago there was an article in the journal Human Reproduction Update. And in this article, which is a meta-analysis, which I will explain shortly what that even is for those who don't know. So in this article it was found that actually the sperm concentration and the total sperm count has been steadily decreasing since 1970 until around 2011. So this was a result found in different kind of studies which were looked at as part of this meta-analysis. Now there has been a lot of discussion about this article, and it was also discussed in like big newspapers and everything. Well, we can take a look at what was even portrayed there. For example, here you see how many articles were screened for this meta-analysis. So a meta-analysis actually is sort of like a summary of different studies where you look at the estimates. So statistically estimates are being calculated, and then you combine the estimates in a certain way to come to a more robust conclusion than if you would only look at like one study or two studies. So you can actually do a meta-analysis like with only two studies, but yeah, as you see here, there were many more. Now, what is the reason for this decrease in sperm concentration and total sperm count? Well, this is actually an open question, and this is the reason why this article is so controversially discussed. Because some think that this is just like sloppy statistical work, even though, as we have seen, there were over 7,000 articles being screened, and in the end, like data from around 40,000 men were used in this meta-analysis. But there are some who think like the way that they counted the sperm was wrong, that there are better ways. It was also found that this decrease seemingly only happened in Western countries, and there was some criticism that they do this distinction between Western countries and non-Western countries, which I think is all valid. But the question remains, well, if this is true, what does it exactly mean for human reproduction? Because this would actually be the first time in a very long time in human history where an evolutionary driver is being reintroduced into human reproduction. Because let's say that the reason for this decrease in sperm concentration and total sperm count is actually something environmental. So there are people who think that the Western diet has actually led to this decrease. There are also many other theories how this came to be. For example, even more frequent ejaculation can lead to a rapid decrease in sperm count. So this could also be a possible explanation. But let's say so the reason for this decrease is something environmental. Then we could imagine that still there is a certain amount of variance among individuals which is not determined by the environmental factors leading to this decline, but which is actually a genetical component that sort of slows this decline or stops this decline or leads to this decline not being expressed in such a strong manner as in other individuals. So let's say this is the case. This is of course a theory and it's not clear that this is really the case. But let's say it is. So in that case, people who have this genetical factor, this protective genetical factor, do have an incredible advantage from an evolutionary point of view when it comes down to human reproduction. So now what we find in the real world would be the same situation as Houellebcq described it in his book, because now we have two groups of which one has a significant advantage concerning human reproduction. So that creates a sort of concurrence in the conduct of humans with each other, and this of course would lead to the group having this advantage, this genetical factor, having more success when it comes to reproduction. So it's interesting that we see that the modern era has sort of introduced not only concurrence in the sense that some humans have more potential sexual partners, let's say, but also it could be that at the same time this decline in total sperm count led to two groups which are differentially exposed to this kind of threat that the article that I've shown has examined. So Houellebcq is kind of then prophetic again, because the proposed solution in his book, which back then was kind of ironic, is now again becoming more realistic, because we see that, for example, through an environmental factor which has an effect on our exposome, so on the part of ourselves which react to environmental stimuli. So if we are continuously under threat by the environment, also concerning human reproduction, then sexual reproduction itself seems to become a problem, because it becomes increasingly unfeasible for a big amount of humans. So what does this all mean? Well, does it mean that there will be no more sex among humans? This is very unlikely. But it seems to be the case that in modern times, sex has become more of a commodity that can be enjoyed or that can be used, if you're talking about reproduction, by a certain class of people. So it's not that everyone has the same chances of reproducing, which has anyway never been the case, but which is now becoming more severe and leading to different experiences in human societies and leading to humans among each other not being able to comprehend the experiences that other humans are doing. So this is exactly what was expressed in elementary particles, because there the humans in these different groups, so for example Bruno and Michel, are so estranged from the rest of people that there is no basis for reasonable communication. And this is of course exactly what we see in our times too, that people have such different experiences that it becomes increasingly difficult to communicate in a fashion so that compromise can be achieved. And the big question is, what happens to human society when compromise is not possible anymore? So thanks a lot for listening, and I hope you liked this video. As always, feedback is greatly appreciated, so if you have any suggestions, things I can do better, please let me know. And please hit the subscribe button to stay up to date. I will record more videos like this on many different topics, and I think you will like them. See you soon.